300-pound dudes tackling you on a frozen field, the last thing you want to do is stay out there. Believe me, the Rams players were thinking about the jacuzzi at their team hotel, that they find it laughable, but more laughable if they totally disregard the trade whatsoever. This guy has transformed the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. And you could argue the entire defense is going to be absolutely ferocious next year. But if your number one priority is to win a Super Bowl, then J.J. Watt is making a grave mistake. To ride this Chad Henne experiment for an entire game, I might need a whole bottle of Hennessy just to get through that. Guy who's won 8 division titles, who's made 5 AFC championship appearances, who's reached the Super Bowl 3 times and has won 2 Super Bowls for this organization. Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 Super Bowl with Green Bay. Drew Brees has only won 1 Super Bowl with New Orleans. There's only 13 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won multiple Super Bowls, and Big Ben is one of those individuals. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Glad to have you with me on a Wednesday morning. It's good to be back. I'd been away in New York for my sister's master's graduation, so that's why I'd been away the last week and a half, but it's great to be back. There's been so much going on in sports, and especially the NBA playoffs. I'm going to get to all of that, but appreciate you tuning in on a Wednesday morning. But a lot to discuss, and I have to jump right in with the NBA playoffs, especially in the Western Conference Finals. Perhaps it's starting to heat up a little bit. The Mavericks get back in the series. They avoid the series sweep, defeating the Warriors last night in Game 4, 119 to 109. Now the series deficit is 3-1. They go back to San Francisco for a game Thursday night in the Bay. But here's the interesting thing about this Game 4. And obviously, I'm not going to make some big claim that, well, this is the manner and the style in which Dallas should have been playing since Game 1. Or that had they been playing this way since the beginning of the series, they wouldn't be down 3-1. Because I think that every single game reveals a little bit more, but it doesn't necessarily tell the entire story. They each just provide kind of a new piece to the puzzle to put this whole puzzle together. And I think that for Dallas, here's the interesting thing. I think through the first 3 games of the series, we've mistakenly identified how these two teams are similar. And more importantly, how these two teams can be similar. Because, and we being media, fans, whomever, because yesterday and last night's game actually revealed how these two teams, the Warriors and the Mavericks, can be similar. Not that they are, but how they can be similar. Because what we've done is we've made the comparison that the Mavericks, with their small ball and their ability to shoot from the 3-point line in high volumes, that's how they are similar to the Golden State Warriors. But the problem is the Golden State Warriors are the greatest shooting backcourt ever. And we've grown so accustomed to their ability to shoot teams out of the building from the 3-point line. But the reality is what's made this Golden State Warriors team last for so long, what's allowed this candle not to burn out and for this dynasty to maintain, is not simply because of the Warriors' ability throughout the years to simply shoot teams out of the building from 3, which they have shown that they can do, but it's been their ability to actually score the 2-point shots, to score with ease inside the paint, to get all the way to the rim. That's where the Warriors have been so lethal. It's not simply the fact that, yes, they've got the greatest shooting backcourt in NBA history. That certainly helps stretch the floor. but they have always shined on the defensive end. They've been an elite defensive team, and they've always been able to break down opposing defenses, getting to the rim, finding themselves wide open for easy layups and cuts to the basket. And that's where I want to turn to when we look at this Dallas Mavericks team, because obviously when you look at the Warriors, you say, well, they've got certainly they have the marksmen, but really they have a mobile artillery unit. They got three of them constantly in motion with Curry, with Klay Thompson, and with Jordan Poole. But yet you look at their team, and the best three-point shooter this postseason for the Warriors has been Andrew Wiggins, statistically, at 39.7%. And so you look at the fact that they've got all these marksmen, they've got Andrew Wiggins exploding, and in the first three games, you combined that with their defense, because the Warriors have had the second best opponent field goal percentage in the playoffs this year. That's what's propelled them to this lead. And so it's easy to simply look at the box score from last night and say, oh, well, for Dallas, it was as simple as they hit the three-point shots. They hit 20 three-point shots last night, 47% from beyond the three-point line. You had Dorian Finney-Smith contributing 23 points on 4 three-pointers. Reggie Bullock, 18 points on 6 of 10 from the three-point line. Maxi Kleber was in double digits with 13 with two threes. So it's easy to say, well, those guys just hit three-point shots, and that's why the Mavericks were able to win. Because that would be a flawed argument, because when you look at game 2 at Golden State, the Mavericks hit 21 threes on also 47% from the three-point line and lost. So what's the difference? Well, to me, the difference in last night, and this is how it truly reveals the similarities between the Mavericks and the Warriors for that particular game, was that, yes, Dallas was hitting the three-point shot, but they were playing harder defensively. And most importantly, they were breaking down the Warriors' defense and actually getting all the way to the rim. They were scoring inside the paint. They hit 21 two-point shots last night, which was the most two-point shots they've hit in the series in any game. And that's where they shared some similarities with Golden State. That's where they took a page from their success and they brought it over into the Big D, because in Dallas, that hasn't been how they've been able to win games. And yet last night, they were able to get into the paint. They finished all the way around the rim. And yes, in other games, we've seen Luka be able to drive, collapse the defense, kick it out to shooters, and they've missed shots. And certainly last night, they were capitalizing and making those shots, but they were also more willing to take two-point shots. It wasn't simply that they were living and dying by the three-point shot. And that's the big difference that we saw from the Mavericks last night. And now when you start to be able to score from all parts of the court, well, now you're much more willing to play harder defensively. Now your fan base can rally around you and get more behind your team and actually play or actually root for you. And that can perhaps keep the energy going a little bit longer. So that to me was the biggest difference. Obviously, they shared the basketball, 30 assists for Dallas. That's what they need to be able to do. So this was an absolutely methodical and strategic performance of how you can kind of tactically go at the Warriors, and really just most teams in general, but especially for Dallas. And we obviously knew that the Warriors weren't simply going to get extinguished last night. They were going to put up a fight, and they did. But obviously the score isn't indicative of the dominance that Dallas showed. They ended up pulling away late. They got the job done. But it was because of their ability to break down the Warriors defensively and actually get all the way to the rim and score two-point shots. So I still think that the Warriors are going to win Game 5, and it's a shame that Ultimately, it took 4 games in the series for Dallas to kind of figure it out and to be able to execute enough at a high enough level for them to try to make this a series and bring it back to San Francisco. But I will say, and I think the Warriors will win Game 5. But I will say that I just love watching Luka and Dallas in this Western Conference Finals, in this stage, or on this stage rather. It's important to see the progression and the development of some of these younger players that are going to continue to be the faces of the league. And obviously, I'm kind of relishing this chance to see the Warriors again on the verge of returning to the NBA Finals. What they've been able to do, I have so much appreciation for how they've been able to retool the last 2 years and still maintain this consistency and to be able to again be on the verge of returning to the NBA Finals 2 years after just utter disaster from an injury standpoint really derailed them a couple years. It's amazing their ability to get back to the spot. But obviously, if the Mavericks can win Game 5, now this is going to be an interesting series because then they're got to be feeling really good. The fact that they beat the Phoenix Suns Game 6 and 7 on the road to win that series. So the Warriors better take care of business in Game 5. Otherwise, we're going to have a series. So I want to transition now to the Eastern Conference Finals, the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat. This series tied at 2 apiece, obviously. And this has truly been a fascinating series because there have been no wire-to-wire, no nip-and-tuck close games from start to finish in this series. This series has been defined by a few quarters that have changed the landscape of each and every game. And obviously, Game 3 technically got close down the stretch. It was about 93-92 before Max Strus hit a 3, and that was the end. That was all she wrote for the Miami Heat. But truthfully, no game in the series has just been extremely competitive from start to finish from the scoreboard standpoint. And it's really interesting how these two teams match up because obviously you watch these two teams play and you look on paper, and Boston clearly has more talent. They've got more offensively skilled players. But the Miami Heat, again, what's made them so good this year, obviously they are exceptionally well coached. They play with a tremendous amount of toughness and competitiveness, and they've got a lot of depth. They've got a lot of depth. They're a deep team. They don't necessarily rely on one guy. And because of how well coached and how disciplined they are, their physicality is able to shine through. And that's how they've been able to win a couple of these games in this series. But to me, I've always been fascinated by who's the best player in the series, who's the most important player, who's the X factor. And sometimes those questions produce a different answer. And obviously, several guys have made those types of arguments for the Miami Heat. You could say Jimmy Butler, obviously, the 41-point eruption in Game 1. But again, as I mentioned with Miami, when you're looking at the best player in the series, the Miami Heat are so balanced. They've got such immense depth on this team that a lot of different guys can shine for them. So I think that there are arguments to be made for a lot of different guys. Just mentioned Jimmy Butler certainly has an argument for who's the most important player in this series. Bam has proven to be extremely critical when he is engaged. You could turn to the Celtics and say Jaylen Brown. But the guy that I'm going with, and I know that this is an unoriginal answer, but truthfully, to me, the most important guy in this series is their best player on the Celtics, Jason Tatum. Absolutely, he has to be their best player in it for them to win this series. Because what we've seen so far, we've got enough of a sample size this postseason to develop a trend. And what the trend has been so far for the Celtics is when Jason Tatum Predominantly, when Jason Tatum scores over 30 points, they win. When he scores less than 30 points, they lose. The Celtics have lost 5 games this postseason. In 4 of the 5 losses, Jason Tatum has scored under 30 points. In game 1 against the Heat, scored 29 points. Now, part of that has to do with his inefficiency, which certainly contributes to that total at the end. But he was 2 for 9 for 3 in game 1. Game 3 against Miami, again, just in this series, 10 points on 3 of 14 shooting. You look back at the series against Milwaukee, in game 1 of that series against the Bucks, just 21 points. Game 3 in that series against the Bucks, just 10 points. The only exceptions, meaning the only games in which he has scored under 30 points and they've still won the game for the Boston Celtics, was game 2 against the Miami Heat, in which the entire team just shot the lights out. In game 5 against the Milwaukee Bucks, where he actually scored over 30 points, but they lost. That was that epic 110-107 win. Giannis was looking like Thor. He had blood streaming down the side of his face. And Bobby Portis gave him the putback layup to give him a 3-point lead. But when Jason Tatum is aggressive, when Jason Tatum is in the mindset of wanting to take shots and he's able to execute it at an efficient and a high level, that's when the Celtics are at their best. That's how they're going to win this series, because this is the first time where the Celtics don't have home court advantage. This is the first time where in the final 3 games of the series, 2 of the last 3 games could potentially be in Miami. And they haven't had to deal with that so far, because the first 2 rounds against the Nets, the 7 seed, the Bucks, the 3 seed, they were their higher seeded team. They earned the right to play that game 7 potentially at home. That's what they had against Milwaukee. But against the Miami Heat, that's not the case. And when you're playing on the road, it's even more paramount that your star players shine brightly, because we know the axiom in sports that at home, your role players have to step up. Obviously, your stars have to play well, but it's about your role players stepping up. And on the road, your stars have to shine and play lights out. And that's what they're going to need. They're going to need Jason Tatum to erupt like he did in game 6 against Milwaukee for 46 points on the road. They're going to need those types of performances. And so when you're going against this really well-coached Miami Heat team, if Jason Tatum is struggling and he's not able to hit those outside shots or get to the rim and draw personal fouls, well, now the Heat can close in on some of those other shooters for Boston, like a Grant Williams, like a Peyton Pritchard. Al Horford seems to have been kind of non-existent in this series. Robert Williams, he can be an impact player, but again, he's not a real shooter. The Heat will be happy if Robert Williams beats them with 20 points. And we've seen from Miami's side that in game 3, even without Jimmy Butler for the entire second half, they were still able to prevail and pull out and gut out a win. We haven't seen the Boston Celtics be able to win a playoff game this year when Jason Tatum hasn't played well or hasn't played at all. He's played in every single game. But the Celtics have proven, okay, without Marcus Smart, sure, we can win a game. Without Robert Williams, sure, we can win a game. Can they do it without Jason Tatum? I don't see that happening. And so I think he is absolutely critical to this team's success. And you look at his numbers and you're saying, well, Jonah, I'm sure it's just a matter of if he hits the 3-point shot. Well, in this postseason, he's been shooting the 3-point shot, or pardon, not in the postseason, in this series against Miami in the first 4 games, he's shooting the 3 at a 29% clip. Now, the last 2 games, he's been 1 for 7 in each of those games from 3. Yet one game they won, one game they lost. So it's not simply a matter of can he hit the outside shot, but it's his total field goal efficiency. How aggressive is he? How many shots is he getting up? Is he waiting for the second quarter to try and rev up, or is he aggressive from the opening tip in the first quarter? So that's what the Celtics need, and that's why, to me, I think he's the most important player in this series. And it's going to be fascinating. Obviously, tonight is game 5. This is kind of, I don't want to say one of those do or die games, but obviously if you're the Celtics, you have a great opportunity tonight to snatch game 5 with the Heat kind of banged up. Jimmy Butler with knee inflammation. Who knows how he's going to play? I'm sure Tyler Hero will play. Kyle Lowry, he's in the lineup one game. He's out the next, so who knows? But game 5 might determine this thing. But it's going to be fascinating. But again, I think Jason Tatum overall is the most important player in this series. I really do feel that way. So, final topic before I switch to my Malkin's moment. So the NBA announced last night their all-NBA first, second, and third team selections. Now, obviously, you take an entire pool of the NBA players and you create 3 teams of 5 broken down by every single position. Basically, you have 2 in the backcourt, a point guard, a shooting guard, and 3 forwards. Ideally, that should be small forward, power forward, and center. So it's only 15 guys that make this list, which is even more narrow and even more exclusive than simply making an all-star team, which is about 24. So you're talking about slashing the entire all-star roster by 9 players, which is a lot. Basically, you're taking the 3 best players from every single position. So the NBA announced their list last night. First, want to read all 3 of the teams. So the NBA's all-NBA first team was the Denver Nuggets' Nikola Jokic. Obviously, he is the back-to-back league MVP. Dallas Mavericks' Luka Doncic. Milwaukee Bucks' Giannis Antetokounmpo. Boston Celtics' Jason Tatum. Phoenix Suns' Devin Booker. The second team, and again, I'm going to react after I read all 3. The second team, Philadelphia 76ers' Joel Embiid. Golden State Warriors' Steph Curry. Memphis Grizzlies, Ja Morant. Brooklyn Nets, Kevin Durant. Chicago Bulls' DeMar DeRozan. That's the second team All-NBA. Third team All-NBA. Phoenix Suns' Chris Paul. Atlanta Hawks, Trae Young. Los Angeles Lakers' LeBron James. Toronto Raptors' Pascal Siakam. And the Minnesota Timberwolves' Karl Anthony Towns. So what's difficult about this list, just from a holistic standpoint, is how they break down every single position. Because what we've seen in the NBA, it's kind of been conflated as far as what those players' positions are, because we're playing more and more positionless basketball. So the designated title of point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center, that's kind of been mixing and trickling over. There's a lot of blending in of different positions, a lot of ambiguity as to what a certain guy is. What do you call Giannis? Is he a point guard? Is he a forward? Right? So when I first look at this list, what makes it tough is you see a guy like Joel Embiid, who has been relegated to second team All-NBA, despite the fact that he finished as the runner-up to Nikola Jokic for the league MVP. So by those standards, you would say he is the second best player. He's been the second best player in the league this year. But when you look at where he finishes on the All-NBA teams, if you do the math, that's essentially saying that he was the 6th best player. The problem is you already have Nikola Jokic in at the center spot. And so if you want to put Joel Embiid in, who are you going to remove from that list from their position? Are you going to say that Joel Embiid was a better quote-unquote power forward than Giannis was this past year? Was Joel Embiid a better small forward than Jason Tatum? Was he a better shooting guard than Devin Booker, or a better point guard than Luka Doncic, right? It's hard to make that claim. All those other guys deserve to be in the position that they are for the position that they play. But unfortunately, you only get 5 guys. So that's why Joel Embiid is second team All-NBA for the second consecutive year. So that's what's really tough. And it's really unfortunate, because the problem is you can't remove any of those guys. I think all those first team nominations and selections are deserving. Luka Doncic, what he's done with the Dallas Mavericks this year, top 4 seed in the West. Now, obviously, he's backed up that vote by leading Dallas to the Western Conference Finals. Phoenix Suns obviously had a 60-plus win season. Devin Booker was a huge catalyst behind that. For some stretches of the season without Chris Paul, he was looking like a league MVP. And obviously Giannis is Giannis, and he deserves to be on there because he puts up pedestrian 30, 13, and 6 with like 2 blocks every single season the last 5 years. So he deserves to be on there. So now it's looking at the second and the third team selections. And to me, the only, I don't want to say gripe that I have, because all these guys are very much deserving, but the one team that I'm surprised to not see any representatives from is the Miami Heat. And perhaps a guy like Jimmy Butler, who's averaging 21.5 points per game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, or 6 rebounds, 5.5 assists. It's a little surprising that he's not on this list. Now, it's not because none of these guys from the second or the third team deserve to be on there, because I think that the guards on the second team, Ja Morant and Steph Curry, there were strong arguments that both of those guys should be on the first team if they didn't miss so much time, especially in Ja Morant's case. I think that if he played the entirety of the season, he'd be a first-team All-NBA selection. Obviously, Steph Curry still had a phenomenal season, second-best record in the NBA, averaging 27 points per game. So then you look at DeMar DeRozan for the Bulls. He was garnering MVP votes midway through the season for big stretches of the year for the Chicago Bulls, playing without Zach LaVine. All these guys were injured. He was the one consistent player for Chicago. He deserves to be there. And obviously, you're not going to put Jimmy Butler as a power forward center spot, so I understand why he wasn't on second team. Now, third team is tough because you've got Chris Paul and you've got Trae Young, and I do think that both of those guys deserve to be on there in the backcourt. Chris Paul led the league in assists this year with 11, 14.5 points. Again, he's the ultimate conductor, the ultimate orchestrator in Phoenix. I think that he's almost been viewed as kind of this shadow MVP, kind of playing behind the curtains a little bit of Devin Booker, but a lot of people contend that Chris Paul is the most valuable player on that Phoenix Suns team. So you're not going to remove him. He's had a phenomenal year, and you're seeing and you've seen the impact of him when it comes to winning. Trae Young was an all-star starter, 28 points, 10 assists. The guy is phenomenal, so he deserves to be on there. The Hawks still made the playoffs, so he deserves to be on there. Now you look at LeBron and Pascal Ciakamen, and for me, I think LeBron, he was just so good, and he put up such good numbers with the Lakers and his cachet. It's hard to truly feel like he doesn't deserve to at least make the third team. I think the one guy that perhaps you can try to finesse Jimmy Butler for instead of is perhaps Pascal Siakam. That's not to take away anything from Siakam. I really love Spicy P, what he's done in Toronto, especially the second half of the year. But he didn't make the All-Star team. And truthfully, I think you could remove Pascal Siakam, move LeBron James to power forward spot, and maybe you could claim that Jimmy Butler is the quote-unquote small forward to make that third team. Because, again, the Heat had the best record in the Eastern Conference this year, and it's just surprising that they don't have any representatives on there. But, again, outside of that, I think that it's a really good list. There aren't any glaring omissions, in my opinion, outside of perhaps Jimmy Butler, but I don't think it's glaring. I think there's just a strong argument to make for him. But no glaring choices that are either on there that I'm surprised about or that I would balk at, or guys that have been left off. So it's difficult to do, but I do think that perhaps a member of the Miami Heat could have been on there, but still a good list any way that you slice it. Okay. Final topic, my Malkin's moments. I have a couple great Malkin's moments for you. So on the topic of the All-NBA teams. I mentioned Giannis Antetokounmpo was named to the All-NBA first team. He was actually the leading vote getter over the guy who won the league MVP, Nikola Jokic, for first team All-NBA. In fact, Giannis received, for the first time ever, at the power forward or just at the forward spot, and even just in general, he received a unanimous 100 votes for All-NBA first team for the forward position. That's never happened before for Giannis. Again, just a measly 30, 13, and 6.5 with like a block and a half, 2 blocks per game. Just a pedestrian year again for Giannis. Obviously, I'm being facetious there. And Antetokounmpo apparently is the only unanimous selection. And he became the first player over the last 50 years to be a unanimous selection to the All-NBA first team, according to ESPN Stats and Information. Again, it's 50 years of lots of basketball players, lots of forwards that we've seen come into this game. That includes guys like Tim Duncan, Nowitzki, Karl Malone, you name it. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, unless they viewed him as a center, which he was. So maybe now, because of the way that it's listed, a guy like Kareem wouldn't be viewed as a forward, wouldn't be grouped and clustered as a forward, but as a center. But regardless, Giannis has been just tremendous. And when you look at that first team altogether with Giannis, led by Giannis, you've got Giannis, Jokic, Doncic, Tatum, and Booker. And according to the NBA, it's the first time that the All-NBA first team is made up entirely of guys 27 years of age or younger since 1954-1955 season. That's 67 years ago, if I do my quick mental math. It's phenomenal, just the direction that the league is going in. And I just think that it's breathed so much confidence now into these younger players, and they're seeing how effective they can be right out of the gates. And I think we're starting to see a trend where guys that are precocious early on, they end up just absolutely sprinting. And they come out guns a-blazing and they are firing. Some guys take a little bit more time to develop, but a lot of guys now in the NBA, you can spot it right away if they are going to be the next big thing. And I love the direction that the NBA is in. I love the future of the NBA. So many young, special, talented players. There's so much talent. And that's evidenced by that first team, what's comprised of that entire first team. And sticking with that first team, shout out to Devin Booker, who made his first ever All-NBA selection, period. Obviously, he was named to the first team, but this is the first time ever that he's even been nominated for a team. So I think that it's certainly interesting. And by the way, I want to give a quick comment. Gangadhar mentioned Levine snub. I certainly think, listen, there's a strong argument for Zach Levine going back to the All-NBA teams. I think the problem is what guard are you going to switch him out for? Again, if you're trying to make the claim maybe he's better than Ciakamen as a forward, perhaps there's a compelling argument there. The Bulls do have DeMar DeRozan. I think perhaps if Levine played more games, he would garner more consideration, but certainly one that I would entertain. I really love Zach Levine as well, so there's a strong argument for him. But again, sticking with my Malkin's moments. So again, shout out to Devin Booker, 27 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He made his first All-NBA team selection, led the Phoenix Suns along with Chris Paul, of course, to a 60-plus win season. Most wins in the NBA this year, number 1 seed. So he certainly deserved to make that team. Jason Tatum, shout out to him. He was nominated for the All-NBA first team selection. In fact, this was the second time that he has made an All-NBA team. He made the All-NBA third team during the 2019-2020 season. That was 2 seasons ago. But what's special about Tatum is the first Celtics player to make an All-NBA first team since Kevin Garnett did it in the 2007-2008 season. Of course, that was the last year that the Boston Celtics won the NBA championship over the Lakers in 6 games. And he's the youngest player. youngest Celtics player to make the All-NBA first team since Larry Bird did it in 1979 and 1980. So again, big shout out to Jason Tatum. And finally, have to shout out the guy from Slovenia, Luka Doncic. So last night obviously was a game 4 elimination game for the Dallas Mavericks against the Warriors. Doncic led Dallas to a game 4 victory over the Warriors to avoid the sweep and send the series back to game 5. He scored 30 points, 14 rebounds, 9 assists. Here's the amazing thing. So according again to ESPN Stats and Information Research, he joined the Hall of Famer Elgin Baylor as the only players in NBA history to score at least 30 points in each of their first 5 potential elimination games. This guy has been absolutely sensational. We've seen what he's done even dating back to 3 years ago when he had his first taste and in just his second year in the league, his first postseason run against the Clippers. Right, that was that series that ultimately went 6 games. I was in the bubble, and Marcus Morris stepped on the guy's ankle when he already had a hurt ankle. Game 6, the elimination game that the Mavericks lost to the Clippers during the 2019-2020 season in the bubble. 38 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. Fast forward last year, 2020-2021 season, 7-game series against the Clippers. The Mavericks lost in game 7. That was the only elimination game that they faced. He had 46 points, 7 rebounds, and 14 assists in game 7. And now you look at this series, and the 2 times that the Mavericks have faced elimination, it came against the Phoenix Suns. Game 6 in the last series, 33 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, 4 steals in the elimination game. In game 7 against the Phoenix Suns, 35 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals in 3 quarters. The guy didn't even play in the 4th quarter. And obviously last night, again, another 30-point, 14 rebound, 9 assist performance in an elimination game. The guy is just magnificent and continues to get better and better and better. And major shout out to them. All right, that's all the time that I got for today. Thank you so much for joining me right here on Morning Joe every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube page, Morning Joe, J-O, with Jonah Malkin. Follow me on Twitter at Jonah_Malkin or at morning_Joe_ JMalkin97 on Instagram and Jonah Malkin on TikTok. That'll do it for us. Thank you so much. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.